Thank you all. Right, John, I'm going to start off with you if I can, and you can start by telling us, and it may seem obvious to a lot of people, but the importance of training and development in helping young people build what we would describe as a lasting career in racing as opposed to a fleeting one.
I think great question to start off with. We've got to appreciate that today not every young person is inspired by the racing industry when they first come into it. They've not all ridden before. They've not all been exposed to what most of the people in this room probably were many years ago. They need to therefore learn. They need to be inspired. They need to go along that journey. Training and education plays a really key part in that process. We've got to look at everything from recruitment, Pony Racing Authority being used as an example earlier, key opportunities to social impact work to really bring people in and showcase the greatness of the industry and the opportunities. The training providers, whether that's the two racing schools, the National Stud, SRA, that are supporting those young people to come into the industry, but equally they're not going to come out a finished product. They're not going to know everything that we hope or think they should know. So we've got to meet them where they are. In order to do that, and recognising some of the research and some of the feedback that Eleanor referenced earlier, we've got to provide them with the right CPD, the right training, and ongoing education. We've got to make sure we provide them with the right environment that fosters that. And I think there's some of the key kind of lessons that we need to probably take away as an industry and think about how do we get to know them, how do we appreciate where they are, and how do we therefore provide what they need rather than what we think they need.
Sasha, a question for both you and for Mike as well, about some of the examples of best practice from your own yards, for example, when it comes to recruiting and retaining staff.
I think for us, it's the retention that's the most important thing, because it's expensive to keep employing new people. So we take it back to the basics. We support our employees with their mental health, if necessary. We do a lot on continuous professional development. So all our staff have the opportunity to develop themselves whilst working for us. And also flexibility. We appreciate that people have family lives, and just being flexible. That's really sort of been the key, and creating an environment that's friendly and supportive and nurturing. We deliver education to vulnerable young people, and there's no reason why we shouldn't create that same environment for our staff.
And Mike, I presume you have to be innovative as well as a trainer nowadays in order to recruit and retain them.
100%. We have a very good relationship with the SRA, because obviously we're far enough away from the racing schools. We need to have that. They're very supportive of what we do. We also, when they come into us, I encourage them all very often, because with us being who we are, most of them, just all my staff have been non-racing. They've all started from scratch. I have some that have been there at least number of years. Sorry, somebody's with me, I think 3. I have a girl who came down from Orkney. She's been there 9 years. Doesn't ride, doesn't want to ride. She rides her own horse quite happily, doesn't want to ride a horse. Not a problem. Loves to muck out. Give her 30 stables to muck out, she's happy. But also supportive. She wants to take a horse somewhere, we'll lend her the van to go somewhere to. We make it easier when they're going to do things related to the sport, if you like, of horses, not just for horse racing. They go show jumping, eventing, and enjoy themselves, and try and encourage them to enjoy themselves. Make them realise the fact that horses are about enjoyment, and if they're happy, horses are happy. Horses happy. Happy horses win races.
Yeah, that's hopefully the template for success. Abby, I wanted to ask you what you think, in your experience, what do you think is the key element of what the employees want from their employer in terms of Gen Z, the next generation? What do they want from the employers?
My personal experience, I'm finding that the next generation salary to allow a work-life balance is really, really valued. So therefore, if they don't have the money to go on the weekends, to go and see family, or to go and enjoy themselves, let their hair down, they're not fulfilled in that role. That's really important. And the other thing that comes up a lot in conversation is housing. Although in this industry we're very lucky where housing often comes as part of the job, they are very aware that they may be limited in purchasing a house in the future. A deposit could be hard to save for. Therefore, having the ability to earn enough money to save a house, save for a house in the future is also really, really important. So, and progression and being able to pivot within their workspace too. So for example, if we have a stud hand that's been in the role for 4 years and hasn't moved up, what skills could they be provided or taught to enable them to move up to potentially to an assistant stud manager or pivot within that role to go in the stud office? So we find progression, housing and salary to allow work-life balance are the kind of things that they value.
Well, we can ask Emily, from your own experience, A, what made you want to work in the industry? And B, what is it that keeps you going back day after day?
I got into the racing industry. I just wanted to work with horses, and I had the opportunity to go and work with horses up at the yard that's 30 minutes away from me. And I took it upon me. I didn't know whether I was going to like it. I didn't know whether it would be too much for me, but I've always wanted to work with horses, and I absolutely love it. Like every day I go in and I'm like so excited like to see what we have like on that day, what we're doing. I ride out. I'm also travelling head last now. I've been given the opportunity for Jimmy to go and be travelling head last. So it's just exciting. There's also always opportunities. There's never a day where you think, oh, like I don't want to go in. It's just, you never feel like you're working. You never feel like you're working within the job. And there's just a lot of like opportunities. There's also other things on the side that you also get, like when you go racing, it's different places to go to. You see lots of different people, there's networks. You just never feel like you're not working, that you feel like you're working all the time, but in a good way.
Yeah, selling the sport very well here at the moment. If anybody wants to know how to retain staff, speak to Emily. John, unfortunately, it was impossible to have all the training providers on stage with us today, but I know that you spoke to them in preparation for today's panel. Can you share a few of the findings in training the next generation of workforce and any trends in their responses?
I think some of them have been kind of touched on in terms of what the next generation are looking for. Abby's kind of covered a number of those. A really solid employer that's actually able to provide the right environment for them. Skills and behaviours being rewarded. That's a big key part of it. One quite interesting piece around digital and technology. They are, I think it was referenced earlier by somebody, they're a generation that have grown up with smartphones, digital technology, etc. So they want information at their fingertips as often as possible. However, there's also the current trend towards AI. So a possible opportunity for the industry is that we offer a number of roles that AI can't replace people. So actually we do have an opportunity to say, this is something that you could come and do. There is a lifelong opportunity and role here. The partnership between the training providers and the employer, that's something I think equally from conversations outside of those, there's a real need to strengthen that and ensure that that transition from training into employment is as strong and robust as possible. It's no different to a former life of mine with elite athletes moving through a pathway. The handover from one environment to another, the care taken, the onboarding, the ensuring there is a contract of employment in place before someone starts, ensuring that we look at accommodation and the environment they're going into. Ultimately, the training providers are doing their very best to support every young person that is recruited in to be ready to thrive in the industry. But as I alluded to earlier, they can't do the whole job. So they need help from everybody else to help connect and take people on. It's not a finished journey. We are seeing, as again Eleanor kind of referenced, an increased percentage of the workforce, and that will just continue and continue over time, that our Gen Z will be Gen Alpha, etc. Over time. So we've got to start leaning into that space rather than just thinking it's what it was in the past.
Mike, obviously there'll be people here in the room right now who are employers in the sport of racing facing challenges with regards to recruitment and retention. What would your advice be to people with those challenges?
There's always been challenges, but be honest about it. The sport is superb. We're selling a smashing product. It's not a hard product to sell. If anybody likes horses, if they don't like horses, unfortunately, it's probably not for them. One of the things I find that actually has helped mine, which I didn't realise did, but helped my staff retention, is they work 5 days. So they have 2 days off. And that's unusual in our industry, if you like. And the fact they have 2 days off allows them to go out on a Saturday night and get blind drunk if they want. You know, it's up to them. They're human. As long as they turn up on a Monday morning, we're all happy.
Yeah.
But they get 2 days off, and I think that's the big thing. And a lot of mine, I make sure they get to go racing with the horse that they spent time with.
Yeah.
You know, rather than saying that Travelling Girl was a great idea and I understand it entirely too, but for wee Jeannie who loves that pony or that horse so much, to get going racing with it, it's like you've given them Christmas. So to try and do that, it can't work all the time, I know that, but I think that's a good thing in making them happy. And again, it's all about keeping them happy if you can.
There's a great deal of pride in that moment, being able to take the horse that you look after.
Yeah.
I suspect, Emily,
Yeah.
picking up on that.
Yeah.
You must have seen that quite a bit.
Yeah, like, it's not just me, like, within the yard that goes racing with the horses. There's also all the other stable lads and lasses that do go with the race horses. And I agree with Mike. Like, it is like Christmas for them when they go with the race horses. Like, I absolutely love it when I take them racing. It's just the pride of taking the horse, especially when they do win, and all like the money that will come from the race, but also you get a bit of money for yourself for like the platting up and the turn outside and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, I totally do agree with what Mike's saying. Like, you
Yeah.
do, like when you do take the horse racing, it's amazing.
Sasha, do you have advice for employers about the best way to go about recruiting and retaining?
Well, I'm a firm believer that families that eat together stay together, and there's no difference, I think, in your work family. So we do something called Fish Finger Friday. So we try and eat together once a week.
Right.
And also, the yard staff used to have their own area for eating their meals and their teas and coffees. We've brought everybody now into a central kitchen, so our education staff, the management staff, the office staff, we all have the same central place to eat, and so that's where you're making a cup of tea, you're talking to everybody. But this sort of Fish Finger Friday, other options are available, has really helped build us, and it's just an opportunity to just be human, and I think that's really helped.
Yeah. Abby, I'm presuming now you're going to start doing this at the National Stud.
Absolutely.
But is it any different retaining and recruiting in the breeding sector than it is in the racing sector? Are the challenges any different?
I think we have some slight challenges with regards to location potentially, but we do have also trainers all over the country that might be in quite rural locations. So when we're trying to place apprentices, for example, it's quite difficult if they're out in the sticks. However, what we are finding is the employers are accountable for the fact they've taken on an apprentice and are willing quite happily to assist with. We've had one recently assist with driving lessons and offer potentially stud vehicle once qualified driving. Kind of addressing the issue that way has helped a lot. But the challenges are slightly different, but we struggle to recruit and retain probably as much as racing does. But it's just out-of-the-box thinking helps a lot on that front.
I'm going to start this question asking John, and if anybody else has a view on it, I'll be really interested to hear this one. When it comes to pay, which is something that everyone has spoken about, should the industry balance age-related scales versus skill-based scales?
I mean, you'll get different views from lots of different people. If we're looking towards Gen Z and future workforce and what they're looking for skill and behaviour related pay. So if they are behaving well, they're displaying all the right things, they're buying into the culture, they're learning the skills, they're developing, that's the reward they're looking for. So if you adopt that view, it's going to upset some people who might have been employed for 20, 30 years doing the same role. But equally, the challenge there should be, okay, how do we upskill them? So therefore, we actually promote a skill-based development programme rather than just simply time-based. So I would be more in favour of skill and behaviour-based salary scales, because that's promoting what we all want, which is a more skilled workforce, ultimately, particularly for the future group, a happier workforce, and ultimately happier horses, to Mike's point earlier.
I think the fact the stable staff get their percentage makes a big difference.
Yeah.
You know, they get the percentage of winning, so therefore they start to pride in it. Now, we yard like mine, the most they've had in one hit, bear in mind there's 8 employees, was 12 or 1,400 quid. Well, 1,400 quid for, you know, a 17-year-old. And there was a 16-year-old lady who got 750 quid or 800 quid. And I said, what are you doing that? She says, well, I'm going to Glasgow this weekend, I'll probably blow half of it. But at the end of the day, that's up to them. But the fact they're getting that because they're horses, because it is, you know, there's no iron team, you know, and it definitely makes a big difference. They enjoy the fact they get the, you know, and they like to know what's happening. You keep them updated, you say, look, that's the stable staff going up, happy days, or, you know, they do enjoy it, there's no question. I think that's a big plus point, and that is, again, obviously, rewarding the skill of the fact that you're hopefully helping. Because in any yard, the trainer's only part of it. You know, you just your team behind you to want to do it. And when they want to do, I mean, my lot will go racing their day off, half them. You know, quite happily, and they don't want paid for it. They just say they want paid for it. So no, just let me get away early for one day or do this or that. And I mean, I know that's quite unusual for people, but it's not unusual in yards like Jimmy's and that. I know that for a fact, where people love the sport and love the horses. You know, and it's just about being part of a team, like you say as well too, with the Fish Finger Friday. You know, I can see that being a great thing. We always have tea together. I make a point of having tea with the staff too, because then you can hear which one you know is maybe heading towards a drink problem or what they're doing. If you're not in there listening to them talking.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to come and hang out at your yard. It seems like your staff sound like great fun to hang out with. Abby, do you have a view on this age versus skill-based?
I have to agree with both. I think actually the skill-related pay is more appropriate. Personally, I think you get some brilliant people that have been in the industry for years and years and years, but if you've got someone that's motivated to be upskilled, they're going to be retained in the industry for longer. So therefore, as they progress and they learn, whether it be foaling or riding a piece of work or schooling of fences, whatever the skill is, they should be rewarded. It's something that they've taken time to learn, they're motivated, they want to stay in their job and progress. And for example, someone that doesn't or isn't motivated to do that, well, why should they be necessarily rewarded in the same manner? We're trying to retain at the end of the day, and that could really help that.
Love to know what you think about it, Emily.
I actually agree. I think it does go off what you know. It's not off the age and how long you've actually been in the area for and what you actually do. Because at the end of the day, you could end up having like an older person within the racing industry that might know a lot, but then you could have someone coming in that would already know a lot more than them. And it goes off, obviously, the behaviours and like what they know. And you could have someone at the age of me, 19, in racing, and they might know a lot, but then they're just getting paid for their age if you went off the age side. So it's one of those where you've got to like take a step back and just look at it and think, yeah, actually, it's more off the behaviours than it is what the age.
Yeah, Sasha?
No, I totally agree. And I think by investing in the people that work for your organisation, it's a two-way street. And so I think it's not necessarily a monetary investing in their skills is as much as paying them well as well and giving them the opportunity, because you want to see everybody doing well within the organisation, and hopefully they don't upskill and then leave you, but which is always a concern. But I definitely think it's based on behaviour and skill rather than age.
Emily, when you choose where you want to work, or you imagine, obviously, being a young person in the sport, thinking about where you want to go,
Yeah.
what is it that you're looking for from that place that will entice you the most?
Probably like the opportunities that you're going to be able to get and have within it, and also the help along the way. Like, I know myself, I'm at the Scottish Racing Academy, so like they've helped me a lot, like with learning new different areas that I may have not known, learning more about the racehorse, like the athletic side, also like the hands-on jobs. And I just think, like, if you're going to want to be able to work in the industry, that's what's inviting, is just the help, and just knowing that you have the help, the opportunities, the pathways, the different pathways. Like, I mean, you don't have to just be riding out. You could just, if you wanted to, you could go be a jockey. There's opportunities to go be a jockey. There's opportunities maybe just to ride out at home, but just school over fences if you wanted to do that. Obviously not being a jockey. Like, there's always different pathways, and there's lots of learning areas and learning curves that you can do within the sport.
Sort of picks up on what you were saying earlier, Abby, about the different elements of it. Having the dexterity as well within the progression to find the right area that you can end up in.
Absolutely. Pivoting is really important. We don't want to lose them completely. So if we've got someone that might have done the same job for years, why not introduce a pathway to step sidewards? It might not be a direct upwards path straight away, but it offers an opportunity, and like I said, retention is so important. It's about retaining the next generation, not just losing them after they've worked a couple of years and moving into a different sport or different industry.
And that there's benefit beyond that, in that rather than just talking about Gen Z, that pivoting piece for example, someone who's riding and gets injured might not be able to keep riding. Therefore, we need as an industry to be really clear as to, for role clarity, skill profile for each of the different roles, what you can transition to naturally, or what's the training provision that you need? So it goes back to that initial question of
Yeah.
the value of training education. So if we can provide a really clear roadmap for any young person wanting to come into the industry that showcases a path they can go on from their first engagement with saying, I think I want to work somewhere,
Yeah.
how do I go through this? But then if life throws me a challenge, I can pivot and I can go this way. Or I want to have done that bit, because equally younger people naturally go, I've completed it.
Yeah.
You know, you hear that kind of phrase of, oh, I completed it, mate. And they've done that bit, they want to move to the next bit, and then the next bit. The way I talk about it is a bit like a tube map. You move through your tube map and you change line and you go to your next place and you explore what you can there. But you want each of those places to be, the culture to be really supportive. It's brilliant to hear about the kind of Fish Finger Friday piece.
Yeah.
That's something I've heard actually in quite a few training yards, is actually something that is done to create a really strong culture. There's a rugby reference from earlier. Bath Rugby credit winning 3 trophies last year with a cultural change, which was bringing everybody together into one changing room rather than having different squads separately.
Wow.
So everyone felt like a family. And that's the big difference that they've credited why they won 3 trophies for the first time in 30 years.
Wow. So Sasha and Mike, and talking about pivoting for the employee, obviously the employer has to be able to have that dexterity and the ability to pivot as well. When we're talking to David Pipe about if a woman in the yard became pregnant, that they would act to ensure that she can work, come back, be able to do school drop-offs and stuff like that, so that they alternate their plans for her. Is that something that employers do enough in racing, do you think? Are trainers, because trainers are traditionalists by general consensus.
I would say the problem is, the fact is it's a physical job. And that's the tricky bit with that one, it definitely is. And it depends how big a yard is, a smaller yard. You might have time that they can maybe go and help the secretary or become the secretary.
Mm.
You know, there are jobs they can do. They can probably, let's face it, they can drive for a lot longer and they can maybe ride out. But there are things you can move, and you say you've got to pivot and move, but you've got to be fluid, I think, to try and keep them. And if anybody's got good employees, as we all hope to have, your job is to try and make them happy and be prepared to shift them a wee bit. You know, so you have to say how we do it in racing, is it right or wrong? It's hard if it's a yard that they know that someone can only is mucking at the yards what they can do, and that's what they want to do. Then it becomes quite hard. But apart from that, most people in most racing yards do well to retain them because they like what they do, and they like doing it for them. So I think you can say racing's not terrible for it. I wouldn't say that at all. No,
Sasha?
I think it's important to actually ask questions of your staff. I think quite often you're worried about what the answer might be, or that you're worried that it's going to inconvenience you, but ask the individual staff member what you can do for them. Listen, that's the key thing, listen to what they tell you, and then action it and speak to the other members of staff to see how we can all support it, if it's an individual needing more support with flexibility with their work hours because of family or whatever it might be, or injury or other things. So I think it's listening, asking the questions and listening more.
Okay, which is what I'm going to do one more time. I'm going to ask one last question because we're just about at the end of this session. I'm going to ask each one of you to tell me something that you feel racing does really well, maybe from your own perspective with regards to recruiting and retaining staff, and maybe something that racing could do better.
I would say racing, just for talking about going racing, meeting new people.
Yeah.
Racing does well, I think, on the whole, encouraging people to become friends and to be friends within the industry, which they don't necessarily get in other jobs. You know, you're meeting new people and new things too. And racing also gives people, I think, who are dedicated and want to do a chance to keep moving forward. I don't think it's a job you're ever stuck in. I think the fact that racecourse staff at all have to pay for the lunches or their food, I think is a disgrace. They've been up since 4 o'clock, they've worked a long day. They have to go and pay for a lunch, which is really, £6 or something, or £8. I think that's a disgrace, I really do, I think. And if they're there, if they've gone, say, a 6-hour journey, so they've left at 4 o'clock in the morning to get there for 10 o'clock, because it runs at 12 o'clock in the winter, and then they have won the last race, and they're faced the same, they're given one meal voucher even. I'm sorry, I think we need to look after them. You know, they always say an army marches in the stomach. Well, I think the industry definitely needs to look at that.
Abby, not just racing, obviously, breeding
Yeah.
industry.
We offer an amazing sense of community. So I send students to Australia that are working with alumni, and they'll come back and work with students here. And as well as they don't have to have done a course, they get to know each other through sales work and building industry professional contacts. It's a real sense of community, and it makes steps, opportunities more available almost. We're really good at offering that to potentially the individuals that are coming in. I don't feel that we are representing our next generation on our boards enough. I don't feel like we can make the decisions for the next generation if the next generation aren't in the room to give their opinion. And we need more diversity on leading organisation boards, especially from the younger generation. We are not going to, it doesn't mean that the older generation are irrelevant at all, but I feel like in 20 years, their voice is going to need to be heard, and the actions have needed to be in place already. I don't feel that's quite right yet.
John?
What does the industry do well? I think the amount of goodwill and the various stakeholders that are all doing their best to try and move things forward. An example we talked about pay earlier, the relationship between NARS and the NTF to look at having a standardised approach to things and making sure there's structure in place. Just one small example of good practice. What could be better? It needs to be better coordinated. There is duplication of effort. But also, I'd come back to something I was thinking about earlier. People don't know what they don't know. And so sharing of best practice or just good practice. So we've had a few examples here from employers and from an employee, which is fantastic to hear. How well we share that so that everybody else understands it and always create that sense of competition a bit more, or play on that sense of competition that exists in sport for employers to want to do better, to do the right thing. But they can only do that if they know what better is.
Sasha?
I think that as a tribe, that we actually care about our horses and the people that work within it. So I think we do have each other's backs, which I think is one of the things that's kept me in the industry for nearly 30 years. I think there are still some narrow-minded mindsets still out there, which will slowly fall off the precipice with retirement. I think...
Thought you had another plan for them.
And I think we just need to be open-minded and listen. We're not going to change the mindset or the way that Gen Z think. So we've got to embrace it and go with it, I think.
Okay, and Emily, the last word's yours.
I know I keep repeating myself, but like the good thing in racing is just the opportunities. I can't exaggerate how much there's like a lot of areas to be able to go and do. And I think the thing that we probably do need to work on, and I know a few yards, like Mike said, like doing the opportunities, and modernisation is coming a bit more around now, isn't it? But I just think maybe a bit more of a work-life balance. And I know at the end of the day, like, these are live animals and you've got to work with them and you've got to look after them. You can't just throw them to one side and say, oh, I'll do that other day. Like, you've got to look after them. You've got to have the staff, the athletes, the class as athletes, those horses. And I think that, yeah, there is a bit of work-life balance, but I also think that you've got to look after the horses, but I also think you've got to look after your staff. And I'm not saying that your trainers, like, you don't look after yourself, like you said, that you give yours, like, 2 days like, off to go and have a massive, like, blowout, whatever they want to do. But, like, I think some trainers are still stuck in the past with it sort of thing, and they just think, like, work all the time. And obviously, it's the mental health within the sport as well. And that's, like, what I think. I think there should be a bit more of work-life balance, obviously not dismissing the fact that you've got to look after the horses.
I think you're a very good ambassador for the sport, and thank you all very much. Thank you to Abby, Emily, John, Mike and Sasha. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.